After getting married, my husband John, who quit his job, pushes household chores onto me, even though he only works part-time 3 days a week and I work full-time. To make matters worse, he's stingy with our living expenses. When I confronted him about using my credit card without permission, he began to ignore me. Hey, I've had enough. One evening after dinner, I tried to talk to him. However, John didn't even look at me and just went upstairs to his office. Determined to have a discussion, I started going up the stairs when I overheard John on the phone. It seemed he was talking to my mother-in-law, Susan.
Yeah, Mom? Sarah is acting all high and mighty as usual. I'm sick of it. Why don't you introduce me to some pretty girl? It's fine, she's head over heels for me, so even if she finds out, she won't complain.
I felt like I couldn't breathe. How much does he look down on me? Asking my mother-in-law to introduce him to someone else? Unforgivable. Biting my lip, I whispered to myself. Just you wait and see. I'll make you regret ever taking me for granted. My name is Sarah, a 34-year-old housewife. I work for a major company as a full-time employee. 7 years ago, I met my husband John when he joined the company after college graduation. We became close while working on the same team. Despite his somewhat clingy nature, I found it cute and was glad that he seemed to rely on me, as I'm older. After dating for a while, I accepted John's proposal and we got married. John had lost his father as a teenager, but he didn't seem particularly tied to his mother, and we'd only see Susan during holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving. We had a peaceful married life, without any surprise visits from Susan, who lives out of state. However, our lives took a sudden turn because of John's actions. We can live off your salary alone, right? One day, John suddenly said when he came home from work. What? I quit my job today. I was utterly shocked by John's casual remark. John continued, not looking the least bit guilty, and with a grin on his face. From tomorrow, you're gonna have to work hard, Sarah. Oh, and of course, I expect you to handle the household chores too. I'll help a bit though. I was taken aback and couldn't find the words to respond. Wait a minute. Are you telling me this after the fact? Yeah, it's my decision to make, right? John and I have been working in different departments for a while now. He never seemed troubled with his work, but I guess he was feeling stressed out. Still, he could have talked to me before deciding to just up and quit. I tried not to show my disappointment and asked, John, are you planning on becoming a stay-at-home dad? Well, I don't really want to do housework all day. How about finding a part-time job then? We could use the extra cash. All right. I'll handle the groceries and some minor expenses. Sarah, you take care of the other bills, okay? Oh, and an allowance of $1,000 a month would be nice. What? $1,000? I blurted out in disbelief, and John said as if it was the most normal thing. It's cheaper than hiring a maid. I was frustrated. He's probably planning to work under my insurance. I've never heard of someone earning $10,000 annually and getting a $1,000 monthly allowance. But I didn't want to argue and risk a fight, so I reluctantly agreed. John, with his light and charming smile, was quite popular with the ladies. Back when we got married, some female colleagues were envious, saying things like, "Why is he with someone older?" or "He could have found someone prettier easily." He must have had issues I didn't know about. Better for him to change jobs than get sick from work stress. I can just work more to cover it. Since he lived with his parents until we married, it's understandable he's not good with housework. Eventually, he'll get the hang of it and pitch in. However, my hopes were dashed. Initially, John rinsed dishes and put them in the dishwasher or vacuum, but after 6 months, he stopped doing chores altogether. For instance, one day, after an early shift and some overtime, I came home tired. Breakfast dishes were left in the sink and a pot, ready to be cooked, was still in the fridge. Sorry, I've been busy too. See, I've been looking for a better part-time gig. John, lying on the couch, chuckled as he made his excuse. Laundry was left wrinkled inside the washing machine. By the way, John works a 3-hour shift 3 times a week, and today's his day off. I can't free up my hands right now, so can you make it, Sarah? I timidly asked John, setting a pot from the fridge onto the stove. Just like I told you before, I've been swamped with work lately. So, it'd be nice if you could help out more around the house. When I leave for work at 6 a.m. and don't get home until 8 p.m., it's hard to get things done. So John frowned in annoyance. I do take out the trash and clean my own room, you know. And when it rains, I bring in the laundry too. Yeah, I appreciate it. But I'm swamped just preparing meals. I make your lunch too. Come on, don't get all high and mighty just for that. I widened my eyes and stared intently at John. John grimaced and said irritably, just 'cause you earn a bit, you're acting all proud. You got that assistant manager position and a better salary than me because of the support from everyone around you. Don't you get that? Leaving me at a loss for words, John went upstairs with his cell phone in hand and slammed the door to his study. After that incident, John's selfish behavior became more noticeable. I can't rely on John. If I use the dryer, he complains later. I was planning to hang the laundry out, but Sarah doesn't trust me. On a sunny day when I trusted John and left the laundry without using the dryer, I came home to find it still in the washer. Then one weekend, while John was out, Susan, my mother-in-law, suddenly came over. It's a good hour and a half drive from their place out of town, so we only visit together during the holidays. I remember Susan scolding me when John left the room during our pre-marriage meeting. Why would he marry a woman 4 years older than him? John had so many options. Why you? I already knew Susan disliked me, so I brought out some slippers, hoping she'd leave soon. But standing at the front door, Susan yelled at me. What do you think you're doing, making John do all the work? Who do you think you are? What? Making your husband do the chores? You're such a useless wife. I knew we shouldn't have let him marry you. Flustered, I replied. With all due respect, I also work full-time, so we're sharing the household chores. Although, recently, John hasn't been doing much. Susan's eyes widened in anger and she shouted at me. Of course, you're a woman, right? Listen, John is delicate and frail. If he collapses because of you, I'll sue you. Shouting one-sidedly, Susan left. When John returned from shopping and I told him about Susan's visit, he replied with an uninterested hum. I wanted to tell him, I wish your mom wouldn't pry into our personal matters, but I felt as if I was being selfish, so I never ended up telling John. I'm tired today. I'm busy too. John began using these reasons to dump all the housework on me and then caused an even bigger issue. When I tried using the card at a local store after work, for some reason, the payment was declined. Checking the statement on the app, I was in shock. Though I didn't recall using it, the card was maxed out. Thinking could this be a mistake, I contacted the card company, only to discover that John had splurged nearly $10,000 on in-game purchases and designer clothes. He remembered the PIN I had shared when we bought appliances and seemed to have used it without my consent. I couldn't overlook this and confronted John as soon as he returned home. Why did you use my card? Don't you have your own? My allowance of $1,000 a month ain't enough. Well, why don't you work more? Wasting time playing video games at home seems pretty silly. John then glared at me with intense eyes. I braced myself, thinking he was gonna shout at me, but John just clicked his tongue and left the living room. He stormed up the stairs, slammed his office door shut, and didn't come out for the rest of the night. Starting the next morning, he began to ignore me. Good morning. I'm heading out. Even when I greeted him, John didn't even glance my way, just sitting on the couch and playing with his phone. When I got home and quickly made dinner, John was watching videos on his phone, grinning as he ate. After he finished, he left his dishes on the table and went straight to take a shower. In short, John wouldn't make eye contact with me or respond to anything I said. Of course, John didn't speak to me at all, acting as if he suddenly couldn't see me anymore. I had a plan in mind, but with this situation, I couldn't bring it up. Eventually, it was the day John got paid for his part-time job. As usual, I handed him an envelope with $1,000, but he snatched it away. He was about to leave. Hey, I need $700 for groceries and utilities. I called out to his back, but he seemed not to hear me and headed upstairs. I felt like pulling my hair out. Given that I'm paying for the rent, utilities, taxes for both of us, insurance, and communication bills, I really need that $700 or life gets really tough. But it doesn't look like John's gonna give it to me, so I reluctantly dipped into my savings and allowance. As the days of being ignored by John went on, I found myself constantly overwhelmed by a heavy mood. By the evening, I'd be overwhelmed by a gloomy feeling, and I seriously didn't want to come home. I'd kill time at diners or convenience stores after work, and even stayed at motels a few times. But in the end, I'm just running from the problem and it's not solving anything. Besides, once John's mood improves, even if we're not exactly lovey-dovey, we might at least have normal conversations again. Maybe when I get home today, he'll respond to me like nothing happened. Maybe tomorrow morning, even if tonight wasn't great, he'll wake up and greet me with a good morning and a smile. Holding on to that hope, I was ignored for 3 months, and finally my body started to protest. I could hardly eat, and I lost nearly 9 pounds. I wonder if John even noticed me, pale-faced, eating my porridge. Today, too, he was laughing at something on his phone, and after finishing his meal, he left his dishes and moved to the couch. I put down my spoon, got up weakly, and approached John. In an almost whispering voice, barely heard over his laughter, I said, "John, I can't take it anymore." Perhaps annoyed, John got up from the couch and headed to his study upstairs. I slowly rinsed the dishes, placed them in the dishwasher, dried my hands, turned it on, and left the kitchen. This isn't right. I need to talk to John. Tomorrow's a day off, so it's a perfect time without worrying about the clock. As I was going upstairs, I heard John's excited voice. He seemed to be on the phone with Susan.
Yeah, Mom? Sarah's still bossing me around as always.
I'm fed up with it. Can you introduce me to some cute girl? It's all right.
She's head over heels for me, so even if she finds out, she ain't gonna say a thing.
I felt like the wind was knocked out of me. How little does he think of me? Asking your own mother to introduce you to a fling? That's unforgivable. I bit my lip and murmured inside. You'll see. You'll regret treating me this way. My feelings for John instantly turned cold, and I decided it was time to put my long-standing plan into action. Waiting for John to fall asleep, I grabbed only my ID and left the house. That night I stayed in a hotel. The next morning, I called the realtor saying I'd like to move in sooner. They readily agreed. I got the gas, electricity, and water set up, and when John was out at his part-time job, I returned home and had the movers transfer me belongings to my new place. The apartment we had been living in was a newly built designer's apartment and just the rent was a hefty $1,500. I would have been content with something cheaper, but John had insisted on it. So, when John quit his full-time job, I started looking for a more affordable apartment. I had planned to discuss it with John, but since he started ignoring me, I went to view places alone and made preparations to move as soon as John cooled down. But after hearing our conversation yesterday, I have no intention of telling John or Susan about her new place. At this rate, I'm gonna get a divorce and live on my own. At first, John seemed like he was gonna just ignore the fact that I had left, and he didn't contact her at all. But after a month, he started calling me Sel, day and night. My voicemail was flooded with desperate messages from John. "Sarah, where are you? How could you just leave like that? I got a notice that the rent wasn't withdrawn. It's auto-pay, right? Did you forget to deposit? Transfer the money now. Utilities, phone bill, car, insurance, they're all sending reminders. Put the money in. And where's my $1,000 allowance? Okay, you can leave if you want, but you gotta cover these bills. Isn't it common sense for the one with the money to pay? How am I supposed to manage on my $800 monthly income? Don't ignore me." The thing is, John was the one who started ignoring me in the first place. I was just giving John a taste of his own medicine, and I can't fathom why he's so angry. All his messages had no apology whatsoever, just selfish demands. As I was going through the messages, I got a call from Susan. I didn't want to answer, but ignoring might make things more complicated, so I reluctantly pressed the call button. "Hello. Sarah. What are you thinking, leaving John like this? A wife shouldn't act so recklessly. Get back home now." I let out a sigh and calmly retorted. "I'm not coming back to that house." "What? You gonna abandon your duties as a wife? Who's gonna take care of John? John's 30, not a toddler. He can handle himself. If you're so concerned, why don't you move in and look after him, my mother-in-law? You really have some nerve. Mainly, John's the one who acted on his own." I explained calmly, holding back my anger. Now, he's quit his job and works part-time, just 3 days a week. Since his salary dropped, I asked him to at least contribute to groceries and utilities. But he doesn't even give that. On top of that, when I confronted him about using my credit card without permission, he started ignoring me. That's why I was fed up and left the house. My mother-in-law suddenly fell silent. After a moment, she murmured with a puzzled look. Wait, he quit his job? The major corporation he was so proud of joining right out of college to make me proud? Yes. One day, out of the blue, without any discussion, he just quit, saying we can live on my salary alone. Granted, I'm John's boss, so I make a decent wage. But it was quite a shock when he suddenly quit like that. Well, I guess so. Susan looked completely baffled. So, for the past year, John has been relying on my income to live. And he doesn't even help with the chores. If you can't believe it, I can forward you messages from John. It seemed that Susan hadn't heard about John quitting his job. When I forwarded the recent message John had sent to Susan, she explained in a low voice. I've been consulting with John from time to time. What did he say? He told me, even though I work my butt off, doing overtime and working weekends, Sarah is always slacking off, not working much and neglecting housework. We're living on my salary, and she's so arrogant. I'm fed up, I want to have some fun with a cute girl. That's the complete opposite of what's happening. I was utterly dumbfounded by John's lies, even to my mother-in-law. How much does he take life for granted? He must think, my mother-in-law will scold me, and then I'll come back. I've never heard of a mother finding a mistress for her son. What were you thinking, my mother-in-law? As I confronted Susan with a stern tone, she mumbled some excuses. I mean, he said married life was tough. What if he got sick from the stress? If having a young woman by his side makes him happy, it's a small price to pay. He doesn't contribute to living expenses, and he's ignored me for 3 months. I was the one about to get sick. It's also disrespectful to the women you introduce him to. Well, a good-looking guy like John has to have fans. There must be girls who want to date him even if he's married. Of course, if he was still working at that big company. That's not the point, I said, feeling more and more frustrated. I realized I wasn't going to get anywhere with Susan. Like mother, like son. I think divorce is the only option. What? Divorce? Surely you don't have to go that far. I'm sure he regrets it. Susan suddenly started to panic. She always put on appearances above everything else. Having a son who graduated from a prestigious university become divorced is probably something you'd want to avoid. I snapped back. Regret? What regret? I'm not John's ATM. If he wants to divorce me and hang out with other women or blow through money, he's free to do so. Oh, Sarah, won't you reconsider? You're all he's got. I coldly replied to the desperate Susan. I'll be hiring a lawyer since John seems hesitant about the divorce. Any further communication should be through the lawyer. I'll also seek compensation for John ignoring me and not contributing to our expenses, as well as any unauthorized charges on the credit card. I wonder if John can even afford to pay. Susan muttered as if it were someone else's problem. If your son can't pay, the parents will have to, I retorted. What? So, please let John know that I want a divorce. Thank you. Sarah, please reconsider. Without listening to her till the end, I hung up the phone. The next day, I promptly called a lawyer about the divorce and scheduled a consultation, feeling a bit relieved. While enjoying a week off at my new place and unpacking, my cell phone beeped with a new message. I'd like to block John and Susan's numbers, but I might need to communicate with them until the divorce is finalized. I thought so, and that's why I didn't block either of their numbers and kept them saved. Checking the content, I realized it was mistakenly sent. Susan, not very tech-savvy, seemed to have posted it in a family group chat thinking it was a private message to John. Well, I figured I might as well read it too. John, this isn't what we talked about. You've made me look bad. Susan exclaimed. What are you talking about? You quit your job and now you're working part-time 3 days a week? There was a pause. Did Sarah tell you that? Yes. Were you living off of Sarah's salary? It's embarrassing for a man to earn less than a woman. Susan exclaimed. Mom, don't be so old-fashioned. That's why I kept it a secret. John quickly countered. There's nothing wrong with being a stay-at-home husband nowadays if you're actually working. But I've heard you're only working 3 days a week, not doing any house chores, and still acting all high and mighty? Anyone would want a divorce. Surprisingly, Susan seemed to be on my side. I guess she was just that disappointed in John. Gosh, calm down. I'm not getting a divorce. Sarah's head over heels for me. She'll regret it and come back home soon. I couldn't help but smirk. I can't believe he's still saying this. Where does he get the confidence that no matter how horribly he treats his wife, she won't hate him? Anyway, what happened to that story about introducing me to a young, cute girl? That's not happening. Why not? I was looking forward to it. Do you even understand your situation? You're 30, working a part-time job, and living off Sarah's salary. No girl would want to be with a guy like that. I burst out laughing. I could just imagine the look on Susan's face. There's someone out there for me. You know I've always been popular, don't you, Mom? If you were a grad from a prestigious university with a job in a major company, maybe there'd be girls who'd want to date you, even knowing about your affairs. Heck, some might even want to marry you. But not with the way you are now. Come on. Against an angry Susan, John's response was ever so laid back. You can still make a change. Get a job in a big company like before. Nah, too much hassle. It's way more fun to chill and live off Sarah's income. Such a careless comment from John. She won't stand for that. Sarah said she's gonna divorce you and take alimony. She even mentioned making you pay off her credit card bills. I don't have that kind of money. If she asks for it, you'll pay it, right, Mom? You have Dad's inheritance, right? You'd be happy to spend it on your dear son, wouldn't you? That's where Susan's replies stopped. Mom? Hey, we're still talking here. Answer me. There was a pause, and then another message appeared. Why aren't you picking up the phone? Don't ignore me. Looks like Susan blocked John. With that thought, I noticed a call coming in from John. Ignoring it, he left a voicemail. He kept on rambling, leaving several messages. My mom's cut me off. You won't abandon me, will you, Sarah? I forgive you for running away, so just come back. You're not serious about the divorce, are you? You're just pouting, right? I get it. Maybe we should just get a divorce. I admit I've done some things wrong. But I can't afford the alimony and the credit card debt. I just can't. And, by the way, keep paying the rent and taxes as you've always done. I'm struggling here, so help me out a bit. You're earning, so you can do that for me, right? And some pocket money too. I was past anger and found myself in disbelief. He probably doesn't feel an ounce of remorse. A few days later, John received a certified letter concerning the alimony and credit card compensation. It seems he finally grasped the gravity of the situation and rushed to a lawyer's office in panic. I love Sarah. She's just feeling down because she thinks I'm mad at her. If she comes back now, I'll forgive her. Apparently, he was making such ludicrous arguments. However, after the lawyer explained things, he realized I was dead serious and went pale. John, who kept insisting he didn't want a divorce, was finally persuaded by the lawyer. It took 6 months, but we managed to finalize the divorce. I felt so refreshed and promptly blocked John and Susan's contacts. Having been abandoned even by his mother, John seemed lost. For good reason, as I slapped him with an alimony of $10,000, 3 months of unpaid living expenses, and $10,000 from the unauthorized use of my credit card, plus his own card payments. John, who used to spend the $1,000 monthly allowance I gave him on designer clothes, reluctantly sold his clothes to raise cash. Still, he couldn't pay it all at once and pleaded with the lawyer, so we set up a monthly installment plan. If he doesn't pay up, I have the means to seize his bank account. With me gone and unable to afford the rent of his luxury apartment, John moved to a rundown studio apartment. He had to take on more jobs, working from dawn till dusk. A former colleague who happened to spot John in town said he hardly recognized him due to his haggard appearance. I hope this serves as a wake-up call for him to ditch his spoiled attitude and become self-reliant. Without the burden, John, I no longer have to endure the injustice of having my hard-earned money taken or being ignored by a roommate. I'm feeling much better. Being even more motivated at work, I was promoted from assistant manager to manager, and my salary increased. I'm now living busy but fulfilling days. I hope to continue leading a meaningful life, balancing both my work and personal life.